everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tail's Crafts, and today I'm going to be showing you the 10 cards I made with our new Tropical Bliss card kit. I am giving away one of these kits in today's video, and all you have to do is leave a comment down below. And if you like today's video, also consider subscribing to this channel, as I hope to continue bringing out these 10 card one kit videos for every upcoming Scrappy Tails collection. So here I'm going to show you everything you get in the kit. You're going to get a full-sized parrot die. So this is normally $14.95. I just showed you the size of it. That was an A2 card. So the parrot is about 5¼ inches tall and about 2¼ inches wide. So he fills up an A2 card entirely, and he also looks really great on an A7 card. Included in this kit, you will also receive a full-size 6x6 pattern paper pad, and there's 12 designs in this pad, and each one is repeated 4 times. They're double-sided, and they're beautiful patterns. You're going to notice that a couple of the images in the papers match the dies from the collection, and it's very bright and tropical, and I'm super excited about the pattern paper. Then you get this Aztec 6x6 stencil and this 6x8 tropical birds stamp set. The only product I pulled in that is not a part of the kit is the coordinating dies. Just to make my life easier, I knew the majority of my cards were going to have a lot of stamped images, so I decided to use the coordinating dies. However, you can fussy cut them. I did go ahead and pre-cut all of my parrots. I will have 4 cards with the die cut parrot, and then the rest of my cards will feature the stamp set. I opted to not include the coloring for the stamp in this video because I have a video coming out very soon where I color every single image and I use all of them on a single pop-up card. So instead of making this video even longer than it already is, I figured I will save the coloring for a single card video because I think I spent close to 2 hours coloring the images in with my Copic markers. And I really wanted to focus on the 10 cards in today's video and also show you the paper piecing for the parrot. So you can see that I created 2 variety of parrots. One is a macaw and the other one is that red bird. I think there's a green bird too, and I don't know why I did not do a green one. But you can see as I assemble these 2 birds at once, which it's going to be the rainbow bird and the macaw, you're going to notice that one is flipped backwards. That is because I plan on doing one card with two parrots, and I wanted them to be facing each other. So on one of them, I am gluing the parts as they were intended, and then the one on the right, you can see I'm gluing everything backwards. You might have noticed that I did add 2 white die cuts behind each of the birds from heavyweight white cardstock. And this is just going to add more stability and some dimension. I also did that with their wings so that they popped up a bit. And in the end, they ended up being like chipboard pieces, which I really like when it comes to like the focal point on my cards. So I did also, for the stamped images, cut them 3 times from heavyweight white cardstock. For most of the cards, I only add 2 layers, and some I only add 1. And that's because I layer my stamps together, especially like with the hibiscus and the leaves. And I know some people are going to ask how many stamps I ended up using. So I did use the full stamp set. I used each image at least once, except for one of the flamingos, and that is because I didn't have that one stamp in my sample. But I used all the others. And I did cut the leaves and the hibiscus flowers a couple extra times because I knew that those were going to be my fillers on my cards. And I ended up having, I think, 3 leaves left over. And I also white heat embossed all of my sentiments on black cardstock twice. So every sentiment from the set, I don't end up using all of them, but I like to have a couple to choose from. So I think I had like 6 or 7 sentiments left over. But I do like to do all of the die cutting, stamping, and coloring beforehand so that I can quickly create all 10 cards. And normally I don't sketch out my card designs, but when it comes to card kits, I find that sketches help me, and they give me a good idea of how much I need to cut. So I knew I was going to have 4 cards with the parrot, so I ended up creating 5 parrots. And most of the time I will have very little left over. Here you can see all of my stamps, and I did Copic color all of these. And then here is the white die cuts that I plan on layering behind the stamped images. So for card 1, I'm going to take the Aztec stencil from the kit, and I'm using some washi tape to mask off that bottom part because it's a continuation of the pattern and it kind of cuts it in half, the triangles. And because I'm creating an A7 card here, I want the pattern to be seamless. So I mask that off and I'm left with the full-size triangles. That way I can shift the stencil down and continue the pattern to cover the full panel, which is 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. So I'm doing some ink blending here. I'm starting with squeezed lemonade at the top, and then carved pumpkin in the middle, and then at the bottom I'm going to add abandoned coral. I do tend to go over each color twice just to get a really seamless blend. I'm using Distress Oxide inks on Nina cardstock, and that's a really great paper for blending. So here you can see I shifted my stencil down, I just aligned it up again, and I'm going to use some washi tape on the back of my stencil to make sure that it doesn't shift. And then I'll add my abandoned coral. And this is the card that's going to feature the 2 parrots. So I chose my distress colors to match the colors on the feathers of the birds. So the macaw has the yellow and the orange, and the rainbow parrot has the red. So I thought this was a nice color combo. And from this panel, I'm going to die cut an oval. So with my 10 card 1 kit videos, I do pull in very basic supplies. So circle dies, heart dies, rectangle, ovals. I figured most of you have these, but I always try to challenge myself to not pull in any additional products. I might do another video where I use the kit with some of the additional items from the release just to show you more ways to use the kit. Let me know if that's something you're interested in, but as someone who kind of built their channel off of 10 card 1 kit videos, I always thought it was important to just show the kit items because some people can only get the kit. So yes. All right, so I cut that oval and I wanted to use it again, but I wanted it to be more subtle behind my birds. So using whatever ink was left on my brush, I went over each section to mute down that bright white. And here you can see that my birds are standing out a lot more, and the pattern continues because I'm using the same oval that I cut from the center. I did add a black frame around it just to help that oval stand out, and I did add 2 white die cut ovals behind it, again for added dimension. You're going to see towards the end I use foam tape because I got a little bit lazy, but I definitely prefer using my scrap cardstock. Here's the sentiment that I'm going to use. I'll add 2 white die cuts behind it, and that's going to go on the bottom left. So here are the 2 white ovals, and you can see that they're not perfect ovals. That's because I'm literally using any scrap that I can find, and as long as the majority of it is cut, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be fairly flat. And I like that it's exactly the shape and size to go behind. So everything is going to go through the mail really nice. All right, so now I have some panels. I have 1 black one and 1 red. So the black is about 1/8 of an inch larger than this blended panel, and then the red is 5 by 7. So it's going to cover my card base, and I'm just using my ATG gun to attach all of my panels together. And you're going to notice that I use a lot of black on my cards today. And that's just because I ended up using super vibrant colors on almost all of my cards, and I just find that black helps those colors pop even more. So I will frequently have these black borders on my panels. So then I just added my sentiment to the bottom and then onto my card base. And just as a finishing touch, I am going to add black pearls. So I guess I did end up using a couple extra things from my stash, but I figured you probably have one or two embellishments you can use on each of your cards. I only end up using the black pearls and I think 2 other embellishments for my cards. Okay, so I, for my second card, cut some of the pattern paper down into rectangles. And I have my macaw here, and if you look at macaws, they have the black markings on their face, so using a pen, I followed the indentations on the face to create that the black markings on the macaw. I did not do that with the rainbow birds. And so this parrot is sitting on a branch, so I thought it'd be cute to decorate the branch with some of the hibiscus flowers from the stamp set and the leaves. So these are the only stamps that I stamped out multiple times because I use them in a few cards as little arrangements like this. And I'm just going to tuck these around the branch. And then here is where I'm going to use 2 of the sentiments because both of them are really small. And I like the aloha and the hello gorgeous because parrots kind of say hello, hello, and repeat themselves. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I was decorating this card. Here I'm adding my white die cuts behind my heat embossed sentiments. And I know some of you do not think it's worth the extra time, but realistically, you spend a lot of time cutting itty bitty pieces of foam tape, so I think it's about the same amount of time. And I only ended up using, I think, 2 full-size sheets of Nina to do all 10 cards. So it's a lot less expensive than foam tape, even the cheap foam tape that I use from Uline. But speaking of, I still use that foam tape on a few of these cards to save some time. I could have cut 2 layers of Nina for the rectangle. It just kind of depended on my mood, on what I felt like doing. So I did regret cutting the tail off of the parrot. I wish I just left it. You can see that I tried to put it back together, but it was very noticeable where the cut line was, so I moved on with my life because that's sometimes what you have to do when it comes to card making. And I glued it onto the blue pattern paper, and then I'll attach it to my card base. I did add some more black pearls, and that is going to finish off the second card. On to card 3, I'm going to create a slimline. So I'm starting again with that Aztec stencil. And here I have another oval that I die cut from light pink cardstock. I'm taping the back of the oval to the stencil. And the Distress Oxide ink that I'm using here is Picked Raspberry. And this is going to create a nice tone-on-tone look because I have the light pink underneath. It's not going to be as stark as the first card where I used white under. And I thought that this pink matched really well with the pink on the pattern paper that I'm using over to the right. And this is a 6x6 paper pad, but there are ways to cut the paper for a larger card base. I will say that there is a 12x12 paper pad with the same patterns to make your life easier for pop-up cards and these larger card sizes, but there's always ways to make things work. So I did cut that pattern paper to 3x6, and I ended up with 2 strips so that I can continue the pattern all the way down on my slimline panel, which is, I believe, 8x3 or 3¼ by 8¼ And then I cut a slightly larger panel from navy cardstock just as a frame. And then on my pink oval, I'm going to add my single flamingo, but I think the duo flamingo from the stamp set would be really cute. And then again, I'm going to create a little floral arrangement on the top left and bottom right of the oval. I'm layering up my die cuts now, and the leaves I did not add my white die cuts behind because I want those to be flat and I want my hibiscus flowers to be popped up. So I only added layers behind the flowers. And again, I'm going to use 2 sentiments because they're really small, and there's 2 that go really well with the flamingo. One of them says tickled pink for you and the other one says let's flamingo. So I thought I should use both because they're really cute. All right, so I like this little arrangement here. I'll go ahead and glue down my flamingo. And before I add my sentiments, I want to make sure that I cover that seam where the 2 patterns meet. At first I wanted the oval in the center, and I thought the Let's Flamingo would cover the majority of that seam, but I still noticed it still bothered me. So I just moved the oval to the bottom, and I still think that looks nice. You can see more of the pattern at the top, which is pretty. And this is my favorite pattern from the paper pad, so I knew I had to feature it. And you might notice that the hibiscus flowers that are on the pattern paper match the hibiscus flowers in the stamp set. There's also a flamingo pattern paper that matches the flamingo stamps. So I love that this whole collection and the card kit matches and coordinates very well. All right, so my oval is all done. I did add 2 white die cuts to pop it up. And my little leaf over to the corner, I wanted it to be the same height, so I'm just adding 2 scraps of white cardstock scraps behind that. And then I'll glue that towards the bottom to hide the seam. And then I'll just add my little sentiments. And then I think I add green gems to this card. Here's my card base, which is 8.5 by 3.5. Again, I'm using my ATG gun. I love my ATG gun when it comes to gluing down card panels. I love layers on cards. So I typically use liquid glue for small die cuts and my ATG for large card panels. And I buy my ATG tape from a place called Tape Jungle, and they're like 25 cents a roll. So I'll link those down below. I think you have to buy a certain amount, but it's really not that much, and you'll have enough to last like a year. So for my third card, I wanted to create the low profile shaker card that kind of was a trend, but it kind of also completely vanished from the card making world. But I really like these. I made a couple for Christmas. So basically what you do is you take some acetate and score each side at 1/2 inch. Make sure that you cut the acetate to be 1 inch wider and taller than your card panel. So I'm going to be using a card panel that's 4 by 6. So this acetate is 5 by 7. And like I said, I scored each side at 1/2 inch. I cut the corners where the 2 score lines intersected. And then you can just glue a panel or place a panel in the center and glue the 1/2 inch tabs behind the paper to create a pocket. So here I'm adding my double-sided tape to each of those tabs. And I will say, to make your life easier and to make it so that it's not super tight, make sure that you cut your panel just a sliver on the top and the side so that you can easily wrap these tabs around. But this is super quick. I would say faster than a typical shaker card, and it's flatter, so it will go through the mail no problem. And I like it because the acetate goes from top to bottom and you don't see where it ends. I love the look of these. I don't know why. They were really popular, it seems, and then they just vanished. Is that just me? I don't know, but I like them. So I closed 3 sides of the pocket. I left the top open so that I can add my sequins. These are super cheap sequins that I have in my stash. So I poured those in. I went with like greens and yellows. I filled it pretty well. And the panel I used is more pattern paper. Then on top of the acetate, I'm going to add this strip of pattern paper with the dark green leaves. And then over that, I'm going to add my rainbow parrot. I will add 2 layers of white die cuts behind my sentiment, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to embellish this card just because there's a lot of shine from the sequins, but I am going to matte this panel. First with some green, which is about 1/8 of an inch bigger, and then a pretty wide border of black, which is 5x7. So this is another 5x7 card. You guys know that my preference are larger card sizes, and I just want to show you how large that parrot is. So I think this kit's a really great value. There's about $55 worth of products in it, and it's only $39.95. We don't have a whole lot left, but I did put a restock in, because the design team will also be featuring it in July and June. So I'm glad you guys are liking the kits. I am very excited to continue making them. So one of the pattern papers had the parrot and the cockatoo. So I decided to use both on 2 cards, and the center of that pattern paper I just used on my last card. That dark green panel behind my rainbow parrot, that's from the exact same paper. So I'm getting 3 cards from one 6x6 paper. I mean, I'm using some other patterns too, but I think it's cool that I got 3 from one sheet, like 3 focal points. So I did do some paper piecing with my leftover scraps. So I cut some of the leaves out. Here you can see I took that same pattern. There's 4 of each design. So I'm going to cut the individual cockatoo and the parrot, and also those little plumerias on the pattern paper, so that I can pop them up on my card. So this, or both of these cards I'm showing you, are exclusively pattern paper. I did cut each bird right up to the line. I'm not adding a border to them because I will pop these up onto the strips I have over to the right. So I'm starting with the cockatoo, and I paired it with the white pattern paper with the leaves. And you might be looking at this and thinking it's really busy. It is, but it works. The leaves on both of the patterns match, and that strip is tone on tone. So your eye still goes to the cockatoo. Here I'm going to add those plumerias behind the sentiment. I went with Hope Your Day is Outstanding, and I thought that 3 was too much, so I took 1 off and went with 2. I tried to make the 3rd one work, but I'll just use it for the parrot. All right, and I'll glue that over to the right, and then I'm going to pop up that strip to the left. And I do tend to, with simple card designs like this, add a lot of dimension to kind of compensate for the simple design. But I really like how both of these turned out. They're very striking, especially against these black panels, which both of them are A2 sized. I did add some more black pearls around the sentiment, and that pretty much finishes that card. And this one is kind of the same. I cheated a little bit, but I did use a different pattern paper for the parrot on the background. This is like the tone-on-tone stemmed leaf. Again, I'm using my leftover leaves that I fussy cut from the pattern paper just to help draw the eye in towards the sentiment. This time I'm going to use leaves and 1 plumeria. Again, I'll pop the strip up with foam tape, and I think that finishes off cards 6 and 7. I have not been counting, but I think that's right. I will add black pearls around the sentiment and also to the center of the flowers on this card. And that little cockatoo that I just showed, there's a die that's exactly like the parrot die for the cockatoo, and there's also flamingos. So there's a whole collection of birds, and they're all super cute. Again, I'm going to add a black mat that's going to cover my card base. And then here I got essentially 3 cards from 1 pattern paper. Okay, so for card 8, I wanted to use the flamingo pattern paper that matched the flamingo stamp. So here you can see I have 2 hearts, again cut from the pattern paper. I think the only print I did not use was the green zigzag you see there. I really tried to make it work, but it just didn't. And I also did not use the blue hibiscus paper. So I'm going to challenge myself in another video to try to use those, but I used every other design. So these hearts were not standing out against the flamingo pattern paper, so I am adding black mats behind these hearts. I didn't have a heart that was super thin to add behind, you know, to have like a thin border, so I had to hand cut it, which doesn't look perfect, but it works. And I'll do the same for this pink heart, which is the reverse side of the flamingo. Now, I did not like the way that that looked. It was just too busy with both of those patterns. So I'm going to go just with the pink. I have another set or another cluster of leaves and 1 hibiscus. And then I'm going to use the stand tall sentiment for this card. I did pop up my heart. That flamingo has 1 layer of white behind him, and then the leaves are flat, and I think the hibiscus has 1 layer behind. The stand tall I'm going to add to the top left, and then I think I use green gems on this card. Here is that black mat again. And then I'll pull in my gems. All of my gems are from Lucy's cards. And like I said, I think I only used green, orange, and then the black pearls as my embellishments. All right, so that finishes card 7 or 8. I think 7. And then, okay, so for card 8, I die cut a circle from one of the pattern papers. Again, I am hand cutting a very thin white border around this. I definitely need to buy some nested circles, hearts, ovals, like that are really close together so that I can get these nice thin borders. So if you have a suggestion, let me know. I'm going to pop up the circle with foam tape, and then I love this pattern paper that I'm sticking it to. It has plumerias, and the colors matched really well with the parakeet from the stamp. So I'm going to add 2 layers of white behind him, and he's going to go to the bottom left of the circle. He is also sitting on a branch, so I will add more hibiscus flowers and leaves to the branch, and then also to the top right of the circle, just to balance everything. You might notice that I'm kind of using the same design on a few of these cards. I'm opting to go with a circle or an oval, but because I'm using different stamps and different patterns, I'm getting different looks with the same kind of design. All right, so I like the way that looks. I'm just going to tuck in 1 small leaf. And then there are some leaves overhanging from that circle, so I have to add some dimension behind those so that everything is nice and flush. For this card, I went with I Will Stand By You, which I think is a nice encouragement sentiment. So here I'm adding that extra bit of foam tape so that everything is nice and even. And then I will add my black mat. I do think a white mat would be pretty on this one too, because there's a white circle mat. Here I'm adding orange gems around my flower clusters here. But don't you think the black just stands out more? I just love black mats. All right. And for card 9, and 10, I'm going to use those large images from the stamp set. And as you can see, they fill an A2 card very nicely. So I kept both designs super simple. I had a bunch of these strips of pattern paper left on my table, and I don't like to waste anything, and these little strips drive me crazy. So I was like, you know, this parrot has rainbow colors on his wing. Why not create a rainbow of pattern paper to go below him? So this is my card base I'm gluing directly on top of, and then these are just my scraps. I cut them down to be 4 1/4 inches long or wide, and some of them I'll overlap. I am leaving a white strip between each one, but this one definitely was the quickest card, and it's one of my favorites. I really like all the colors. And then, as usual, I'm going to add my 2 white die cuts behind, and this does make a huge difference. So I will continue doing it for my videos. I know some people don't like it. You can use your foam tape, but I spent about 30 minutes on these 2 large images from the stamp, so I knew that while it's a simple design, I still spent a very long time on it with the coloring. On this card, I'm using the orange and the green gems. And I loved having my sentiments pre-cut, so I was just kind of picking and choosing each one for my cards, and there are coordinating dies for the sentiments, which is nice. All right, so I had, again, some leftover ovals that I cut, so I decided to use them on my last card. You guys know, with these 10 card one kit videos, it's inevitable that you start to run out of ideas. So usually by my last card, I'm resulting to scraps and kind of paper piecing my way into the last card. And that is no exception with the last 2 cards. But I do like how both of them turned out. I'm going to add my cockatoo image to the bottom left of the oval, and then again another cluster on the top right. And then I will use the "I will stand by you" sentiment. And then that will finish off my last card. I did not pop up the oval, which is surprising. But you guys know I'm going to mat this with some black paper, and I think I embellish with black pearls. And that will finish off my final card today, featuring the new Scrappy Tail's Tropical Bliss card kit. I am super happy with how this kit turned out. If you've been around from the very beginning, you know that I started my channel off of these 10 card one kit videos. I know they're not as popular as they were a few years ago, but I think it's a great way to get inspired. For me, watching these videos back and watching other people's videos, using card kits, I found that I was most inspired by them just because kits are a bit challenging when it comes to coming up with a lot of ideas. But as you can see, you can easily create 10 beautiful cards with a single kit, and I will continue making more. I do want to add a couple extra products, maybe just 2 or 3 dies, so that I can really stretch the use out of the kit and create some different looking cards. Here's all 10 of them, by the way. If you want pictures, remember to head over to my blog, and if you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you guys think of the kit down below, and remember to leave a comment to enter yourself into the chance to win one of these kits. So I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!